Hey everyone, I'm Will Jarvis, CEO of Valuebase. We build AI tools for property tax assessors all across the world. This is Assessment Matters. Every week, we interview an expert in the field of property tax assessment and appraisal. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to try an AI tool specifically built for assessors, sign up for ValPal at www.valuebase.ai/ValPal. It's completely free, and we'd love to have you join us.
Well, Ken, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How about you, Will?
Good, good. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. We're here in Cherokee. We've got Jonathan behind the camera over here. How's the week been so far? You had fun?
It's been a great week. A lot of informative sessions, a lot of great opportunities to mingle with my colleagues from around the state and vendors around the country. So yeah, it's always good to get together and learn something new.
Absolutely. It sure is. It's beautiful out here too in the fall.
Yes, it is.
Very
Yes,
nice.
it is.
Well, Ken, I'd love to hop into it. You mind giving us just a brief bio? Where are you from originally? How'd you get into the industry?
Well, I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up between Raleigh and Fayetteville in a small community in Harnett County.
That's why you sound like me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I sound like I'm from here.
Yep.
And in Charlotte, people ask me, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I'm from here.
Here, yeah.
So when I was an accounting major in college and
Nice.
planned on being a CPA one day, and economy changed, and as everybody else, it's the profession that we all fall into.
We all fall into one way or the
nobody
other.
chooses it. Nobody grows up going, I want to be the assessor.
I want to be the assessor. You're not on the Wheaties box.
Well, I might be
Yes,
one day.
yes.
I'm working
on it.
I'm
We're
working
actually
on
working
it.
on that marketing campaign. We'll
Yeah.
put assessors on Wheaties boxes.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, remember old Life cereal? I would have loved to have been on one of them
I
too.
know, yeah.
But fell into the profession. Started out as a residential appraiser in Harnett County and ended up doing the commercial properties there. My boss came to me one day and said, I think you need to get some experience interviewing. He said, there's some openings around the state.
Right.
Why don't you put your name in the hat? So I interviewed in one neighboring county, and they thanked me and sent me on my way, and interviewed in another one, and I wasn't expecting to get an offer, and they offered me the job. So 1996, July 1, I was appointed in Chatham County. Worked there for a few years, went down to the coast to Onslow County. I was sitting there thinking, how am I going to increase my abilities? So I went
Right.
at that time, Onslow was the 10th largest county in the state. Probably a third of the citizens were Marines, but
Right, they're there, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a large county, a lot of different parcels and properties than we
Properties
had
going there, yeah.
and the others I'd been in. So it was a great move for me. And from there, ended up in Durham. From Onslow to Durham, I had started working and doing some teaching through the School of Government. So when my mentor, Joe Hunt, retired from the School of Government, I interviewed over there and got an opportunity to go to university. Spent almost 6 years there. And
Dr. Joyner.
not
Professor
not quite,
Joyner.
not
Professor
quite.
Joyner.
There we go.
There you
There
go.
we go.
There you go.
There we go. I don't want anybody calling me and wanting any prescriptions, so we're going to leave the doctor off. But really loved it. Never imagined that I would leave. But 2011 reval in Mecklenburg did not go as planned, with the economy still tanking and going down.
Right.
The first 4 years of their reassessment cycle, values were going up at record paces. So people were expecting their values to go down, when in fact the first 4 years greatly eclipsed the last four.
Right.
So I have an interest in our profession, and
Duty call.
duty called. I told them no probably 30, 40 times. at least their headhunter that was calling.
They didn't take the hint.
They didn't take the hint, and finally the opportunity came up, and I was like, if I can keep this legislation from spreading across the state, I can say at the end of my career, I did something for the profession.
Right.
And so I came in 2013 and led that reval review in Mecklenburg County. Have had great teams there, still do. And we were able to finish the review. I guess we wrapped it up somewhere between 2016, 2017, and then we set our sights on our first in-house revaluation with me and the team there. And we've done a 2019 and a 2023 and working right now on our 2027 reval. So it's, it's been a good career. I love the teaching. I still love that. I still do a lot of teaching around the country. Not as much as I would like to, but it is what it is. The full-time job pays the bills.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, Ken, I want to go back and ask some stuff about your background as well, but on the teaching side, you do a lot of teaching. You were a professor, you taught at the School of Government at UNC, great place. I'm curious, what is the thing, perhaps in property tax or just assessment generally or appraisal, that you think is really important, but perhaps is non-obvious or a lot of people miss, or it's something like that?
Well, I think we always have to stay grounded in our fundamentals,
right.
and supply and demand is ultimately what buys and sells property.
Right.
So understanding those fundamentals that we learn in
Econ 101.
introduction, Econ 101, or for us, IAAO 101,
right.
fundamentals of real property appraisal. That first day and a half, you're really getting that foundation. And it's a course that I suggest people go back and retake later, because you're going to get more after you understand what you're doing than you did the first time when you were just trying to memorize it and get certified and keep your job. So,
right.
So I think that the fundamentals are the most important thing, and then beyond that, taking those and applying those fundamentals into mass appraisal and understanding the statistics and the consistency and the equity and all of those factors that go along with a good reappraisal are so important.
Right, absolutely. Well, this goes along with your teaching point, Ken. I've had this thought for a while that, we have the ratio study standard, and I talk to a lot of appraisal boards, assessment boards, and it's always surprising to me how often I go in and I have to explain, what COD is, what PRD is, what vertical equity, what horizontal equity is. And these concepts, they're fairly simple, but they're complicated at the same time. What's the way you found that it's easiest to get across? So let's say there's just a tax bill or something, and what is like uniformity? What is horizontal equity? What is, how do you talk about these things? What have you found has been particularly useful in teaching people really quickly, just kind of the base level concepts around ratio studies and what they are?
Well, I in class, talking to citizens, when I start talking about uniformity, a lot of times I'll draw a dartboard.
Nice.
And I'll be like, okay, here, oh, we missed the board, here. Does it look like, from these spread out
What's that
dots,
grouping look like?
What is that grouping?
Right.
Are we really getting towards our target?
Right.
And then I'll come back and I'll draw a bunch all around it.
Right.
I'll be like, which set do you like better?
Right.
And people will be the one that's surrounded.
It's tighter.
That's what you're trying to get in mass appraisal.
Right.
And this close-knit circle around here shows that we're doing good work, whereas we're missing the board, we're spread out, shows that we're not. And that's really what that COD is about. What is that percentage of that average miss?
Right, the average miss there. That's good. That's really helpful. I think tools like, and pictures like that, anecdotes like that, metaphors are really helpful because, if you read the ratio study standard, it says uniformity that starts describing the metric, the absolute average, absolute deviation. You're around like, oh my God, your brain starts clouding over. And I think it gets hard for people to grok those things.
Well, and the average person is carrying through life the math that they learned in the first 8 years.
Right.
Their 8th grade math. That's what the majority of us remember.
Yeah.
That's what we use. Unless you go into engineering or architecture or some of those fields that are using the calculus and advanced math and things like that,
whatever.
they're not using it. So I always try to remember like the dartboard, talking about the principle of substitution. You go to the grocery store, there's chicken, there's beef, and there's pork.
Right.
Pork's on sale. What are you going to buy?
Good pork.
Going to buy pork. Family's having pork tonight.
Yep.
So trying to break it down and explain it in a way that they use it at home, or they can see a game that they played, is easier, because they're never going to remember that definition.
Yeah.
And the ratios study is written for professionals.
Right, exactly.
And it's written at a very technical level. So anytime we can break it down and give them something they can take with them, it's always good.
That's really helpful. That's awesome. So you started out, did you go to Chapel Hill? Where'd you get started?
NC State.
So you went to State.
Yep.
So you went to State. Did you
My
go
6 years at UNC were missionary work.
Right, doing the Lord's work.
Doing the Lord's work.
I love it.
Doing the Lord's work.
I love it. So you started at State. Did you go straight into the office out of that, or was there?
I did.
Very nice.
When I left NC State, we were coming out of that first Desert Storm.
Oh wow.
And so the accounting firms went from taking 90% of the graduates to 20%.
Oh boy.
And I didn't make that 20%. I enjoyed college probably a little more than I needed to. And so the job opening came open back home. I moved back home, was there for 3 years, and never looked back. My initial work was approved by the CPA board. That'll be, you can use this as experience.
Oh, cool.
You never went back. Never went back. Never looked back. You find something you enjoy, you better stick with it.
Right, you better roll with it. Did you found that, or have you found that the accounting background has been quite helpful in assessment?
Oh, very much so. When you get into 102 income approach to value, understanding the time value of money, and those classes that we took there, it's invaluable, because, as much as we talk about that we don't do things like accountants,
right?
There's perspectives in there that we can utilize. And if you can talk about some of those things with accountants, you can help them understand what you're doing as well.
Right, absolutely. That makes sense. Which, a lot of agents have that background.
That's right. That's right.
That's cool. So you come back home, start in the office. Was at 3 years, were you the assessor collector in Onslow after 3 years?
Chatham.
So in Chatham. So then you
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yes, I was. I'm not sure that they realized I was 25 at the time.
That's impressive. That's actually really impressive.
That's why I said I interviewed and I was just getting the experience. I wasn't expecting an offer. And funny story, when I got appointed was the first time I filled out an application, left the board meeting, went to the HR office, filled out the application, slid it across to Miss Bush. I remember Kim Bush like it was yesterday, and she looked at it and she slid it back. She said, "I think you made a mistake." I looked at him like, I might be a little nervous right now.
Yeah, but,
like name, address, social security number, date of birth. It's like, no, that's right. You were born in 1970? It's like, yes, ma'am. She just nodded her head.
Okay.
So, it's funny. I spent so much of my career with there being concerns that maybe he's too young.
Right.
And then you wake up one day and nobody has those concerns anymore.
What happened?
And you look around and you're like, God, I'm the oldest person in the room.
Good Lord, right?
Yeah. What happened?
Wow. That's right. So that had to be a pretty crazy ride to go from just you're the set tax assessor collector, because that's a lot. You're talking to county council, people are calling you. How was that transition, like being that young and getting into it?
Well, I was very blessed. I had a good staff in Chatham, some people that are still in the business today that were very bright, and we kind of learned together how to do it.
That's cool.
So they were wanting to go to an in-house revaluation. So my chief appraiser and I, we came up with a plan and put it in action. They ended up using that plan, and she eventually became an assessor, and maybe two more in that office ended up being assessors. So
wow.
So yeah, we learn together, and everywhere I've gone, I've had just fantastic people around me, and it just makes a difference when you can establish some trust,
Right.
and build on that trust. It makes a difference.
It does. It really does. So I'm curious, Ken. You've got a lot of experience in the biz. You probably have more experience, I think, pound for pound, than anybody that I've talked to so far. Just having started as young, there's nobody that starts that young and keeps going for this long. We've got a lot of movement in this country right now. People are trying to get rid of property tax. So we talk about this in Florida. They're talking about trying to get rid of it. I don't think they actually will, because they don't, they've got to fund the state somehow in schools. But I'm curious, there's a big movement against this. What do you think is driving a lot of that? Is this just, movement from the housing market having gone gangbusters after COVID? What do you think is driving a lot of this? What do you think we should do about it? What should we be thinking about as an industry?
Well, I think for the majority of my career, it was the hidden tax, because it was paid in their escrow. They never saw it. They never had to worry about it.
It's like withholding.
It just got
Like
got paid.
Yeah.
And for companies, the values have swelled to a level that it's worth hiring professionals to come in and bring up issues and file appeals and work on those values, where I think for most of my career, even industry really wasn't worried.
Right.
They were able to make it, but margins are getting thinner. Costs are going up everywhere, and it's another level there. I'm not really, I've followed the Florida thing, and I think the biggest problem is that they don't really have a solution. Kind of like you said, of what we're going to do in lieu. They already have no income tax down there, so you're just going to
kind of the dog that
rely
caught the car.
on sales again. Yeah, sales tax is just going to continue to grow, and I think if you rely only on sales tax, you become even more regressive.
Yes.
In how much your citizens are paying. So I think that it's the number one funding source for local governments across the country. It's just local governments aren't the ones that get to make those decisions.
Right.
And so it's always been a little critical, a little difficult to handle the changes that come down, sort of like the reval review back in 2013 when they passed that law. So we just have to do the best that we can. I think you look at what our technical standards and the ratio standards that they've changed, and really enhanced what was becoming kind of stagnant, because we hadn't done anything new with all the technology that we had. We were still basically doing something I could do on a HP-12C.
Right.
In so many cases. So I think that we are really utilizing the technology to enhance what we're doing, and I think that that's how we continue with the property taxes, by just doing it better.
Right. Just doing it better.
Being more consistent, being as equitable as possible, and educating our customers.
Exactly.
Making sure that they understand the process.
That's great. On the education side, what have you found? Do you go to Rotary clubs? Do you like to speak on TV? What have you found is a good mechanism to get the word out about what you're doing, what you're working on in MEC?
Well, you can go on TV as many times as you want, and they can cut it down to what they need.
Some very exciting.
They can take just a few sentences out of a statement and change the whole meaning of what you've done. So I think you have to be careful on relying on one method. If you've got a good relationship with a TV market, which we've established some really good ones, you can really get some good information out
there.
But there's nothing better than hitting the bloodstream and getting out in those Rotary clubs and neighborhood associations and really digging down and getting to those customers. Because my goal is really to educate the ones that don't have maybe all of the means to hire an attorney and
Exactly.
hire an appraiser. And, I'm more interested in the guy that's working at Advanced Auto Parts,
Right.
who might not be able to take off time from work
Exactly, to go.
to come in and appeal his value. So if I can give him some tools online and explain it to him at his neighborhood association, maybe he can provide us some information that he'll never have to come into the office.
Exactly. That's helpful. I'm curious, this kind of runs along with that. Thinking a lot about, I was recently at the American Budget and Financial Management Association meeting. It's, for all the cities and counties in the U.S. And a bunch of budget academics and people that work in budget. And I gave a presentation on property tax, and one of the academics there, he raises his hand. He's like, Will, I've been looking at this. It's this big mystery in budget, budgeting academia about, why does it seem like a lot of property taxes, like they have kind of poor vertical equity? What's going on? And I just started laughing because I was like, man, it's like so simple. There aren't that many sales on the high end. At the end of the day, it's just harder to appraise. There's more variability on the top end. These people have, like you said, they have time to come in and contest these values. There's a lot of issues. But how do we think about working on the vertical equity issue? It just seems like it's something you constantly just have to be thinking about and working on, or something like that.
Yeah, in Mecklenburg, we've been working with the School of Government and another gentleman who does a lot of the statistics and things like that, because one of our goals is to improve vertical equity through education.
Nice.
We encourage people to appeal.
That's good.
We try to give them the tools to understand.
Right.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if they come in and they show me pictures of their kitchen and bathrooms and their flooring and it needs work, and we drop that effective age to the appropriate level, I've done my job.
Exactly.
And those are the ones, again, that if they have to take off work, but if they understand that they can take some pictures and upload them from their phone directly to our appeals system, and the appraiser can look at it, they may be able to send them back some additional questions that we might have, and they can do it from their own home.
Exactly.
They can do it over their lunch hour, whatever works out. And so, that's the way I'm trying to combat vertical equity, because I don't need to educate those with the means already. They're already taken care of. Now, we greet them at the Rotary Clubs and we meet with them, but it's really getting down into those census blocks and really understanding where people live and own properties that might not have the knowledge, because they haven't really worked with property tax and understanding what those sales down the street might mean to them.
Makes sense. So Kent, you're really well respected in the state. Do you spend a lot of time talking to legislators about like what they should be doing or trying to inform them?
At times we do. I can remember in the last 2 years probably, we got together with some of our local delegation just to kind of talk to some of those newer members about what we were trying to get accomplished. And we were able to bring them on board to support some of the things that we were doing, because they were looking at it from a slightly different angle, but trying to get to the same place that we were. So, I'm not on the legislative committee right now, but, there's some talk about maybe trying to put something together to look at updating what we call the Machinery Act. It hadn't been updated in as a totality since 1973.
Oh, wow.
So maybe looking at bringing in some of the newer information, especially now that the technical standards have been updated, and really trying to bring the system forward.
Makes sense. Going along those lines, when we think about reappraisal cycles, a lot of states in this country, they do it yearly. Some people do it, bi-yearly. Some do it every 7 years. It varies. What are you a fan of? How often should we be reappraising in the ideal world?
Well, I think it depends on what your statutes require. In North Carolina, with the schedule of values and the having to put it out for public review, and they can appeal it to the state. There's about a 5-month process in there from start to finish that you've got to accomplish. So really the cycle is kind of dictated by that process, and all the work. There's states that don't have that schedule of values that they can go out and produce the values and show their results. With those, a 1 or 2 year cycle is really not that difficult.
Right.
Whereas for us, we've got to build everything in those models, and have a lot of requirements there. So
right.
I think the closer you can stay to market, you're always better.
Because you don't have these big jumps.
You don't have these big
shock
jumps.
people.
But if you're doing it annually, I'm not sure that you're getting your money's worth for the work, because in most cases you're still going to be within the IAAO standards of
year over year, right?
Yeah, on that level of appraisal. So I think anywhere from 2 to 4 years works really well. I think I also have some concerns where maybe in some states they may be updating some of the values, but not all of the values.
Yes.
And you're creating some inequities there if you're not looking at everything. Even something's at 92%, so we're not going to touch it, but we're taking everything else back up to 100.
Right. Exactly.
So you just got to be careful. But I think 2 to 4 years. We got 420,000 parcels in Mecklenburg, and I've been in counties where we had 30,000 parcels.
Right.
It's all about trying to make the system as fair as possible.
Exactly, as fair as we can. Makes sense. Well, Ken, one last big question for you. Let's say we've got a kid coming out of North Carolina State right now. He's a accounting major, doesn't want to go work in public accounting, kind of finds himself in a similar place. What advice would you give that person? Like, what do you wish you had known kind of coming into the industry?
Well, I think that there's public service is definitely not for everyone, but I think if you've got a heart that really wants to make things better and make a difference for everyone, there's nothing better than public service.
Right.
And because I may not ever ride on an ambulance and save someone's life, but because of our valuations, the county's able to fund it.
Exactly.
I may never run into a fire, but because of our work, someone gets trained and is following their professional goals. And
right.
We're able to be a part of that process. So, working in the assessor's office is not glamorous. You're never going to be everybody's friend.
Right.
But you're making a difference, and I think that really everybody should take a look at public service and see if there's room for them there.
Right, because it's rewarding. Have you found it rewarding?
Oh yeah. There's no way I would still be doing this 32 years later.
You're playing golf somewhere.
Yeah. I could retire today, but I still find joy in helping to make the system better and working with the team that I've got. I used to work with Jonathan when he was with Mecklenburg, and I go around the room and these meetings, and I see some of my people thriving, moving on and doing their own counties. So it's a rewarding profession. It's a rewarding job, and it's really given me an opportunity to feel like I've been able to make a difference.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, Ken, thanks so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. If people have questions, they're interested, they're an assessor, let's say they just got started, can they reach out to you, find you on the internet?
Sure.
Awesome.
I'm on the website.
You're on the web,
mecnc.gov. You can't hide.
No, you can't.
Public service, you're not trying to.
No.
So if they can find me, get me a message. I'd love to talk.
Awesome. Well, Ken, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Will.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Assessment Matters today. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you like what you heard and you want to learn more about what we're doing at Valuebase, I encourage you to go ahead and head to our website, www.valuebase.ai/ValPal. There, you can sign up for our free AI tool for assessors, ValPal. All right, hope to see you all at a conference soon.